pressing the deadlift with a broom handle is a really good way to connect with your posterior chain muscles. So that's all the muscles running all the way down the back. And a deadlift movement pattern is what we know as a hinge pattern. So it's a hip hinge. We're not going to really be using the knee joint at all. It's all about flexion and extension through the hips. So it's a really important movement pattern, especially when it comes to picking things up off the floor, getting down onto a chair, and so forth. So grab your broom handle or your mop or whatever long straight piece of pole that you've got to hand. Start off with your hands just a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. And when you've got your broom handle, when you're in that position, you want to try pressing your piece of kit against your thighs. Rolling the shoulders back and down, see if you can squeeze into your back there. So think about just easing the shoulder blades together, but being careful not to arch. So this is where we have to work onto that hip tilt again. So we just practice doing that little hip tilt front and back. Tipping the water out of the bucket. If you imagine your hips are a bucket of water, try tipping the water out the front, feeling the front of the hips going towards the floor, feeling that arch in your back as it squeezes into your lower back muscles. Now let's do the opposite. Let's tuck the tailbone underneath us. Keep the knees soft to do this, because if you're locked in the knees, it's harder to bring the tailbone under. Keep a little softness there. Tuck the tailbone under, or almost point it down towards the back of your heels. And then you'll feel that that lower back just flattens out just a little bit. It doesn't need to be completely flat. You need to have a little natural curve at the lower part of the spine. But you should also feel how this encourages the front of your abdomen to just pull in slightly. And I'm looking for the sensation of pulling in the belly button, or I like to say zipping up your abdomen like you're zipping up a jacket. Now we're going to have our feet shoulder width apart for this. You might want to just turn your toes out a little. And then keep this bar pressed on your thighs and squeeze into your glutes, and see if you can just feel your front of your thighs or your quads just squeezing as well. Give them a squeeze. Now with a softness in those knees, all you're going to do here is you're going to push the hips back, but you want to keep your weight centered. So as your hips are going backwards, you've got one part of your body going backwards. So it means that the chest has to come forwards to keep the weight centered. And you'll find that center of the weight by just making sure you grip the toes and the heels into the floor. And the further I push back, the lower this bar will come down the front of my body. I'm still squeezing my shoulder blades back, keeping the arms nice and straight. And then at the point that I feel my hamstrings, the backs of my thighs go tight, I'm going to start to lift up by pushing into the floor, squeezing the glutes tight, or the bottom, pressing them forward and underneath you, and finishing nice and tall at the top. We don't want to finish with the hips forward and going into this back bend position. We want to finish with the hips stacked under the ribs. So again, keep the knees soft, and you're just going to keep that softness. You're not going to bend the knees anymore or straighten them. We're going to send the hips back, allowing the chest to come over, keeping that weight centered through the toes and the heels, pressing that bar against your body as low as you can till you feel that tightness in the back of the legs, making sure that tailbone hasn't popped to stick up, that it's still just tucked nicely under, and then press into the floor, squeeze through the glutes to come back up. So making it nice and smooth. You'll try to make as much extension as you can through the back of the body. So you're thinking about keeping the back as straight as you can, really lengthening out at the spine. And as you do this, your eyesight is going to lead down towards the floor, so you keep your chin in a nice neutral position throughout the whole move. And this will help to keep that back nice and flat. So at the bottom of the position, wherever your extension is, from the top of your head through your shoulders down to your hips should be nice and straight. And then as you come up nice and tall, you're in a natural upright posture. You can check your back position by just popping your straight edge or your broom handle onto your back here. So press the back of your head into your broom handle and press your tailbone and pull in your belly nice and tight. Then soften the knees, send the hips back, keep the weight centered, keep that spine position, feeling that rod or that pole pushing into the back of your shoulders, into the back of your hips. And as you come up, keeping that pressure nice and even through the top and the bottom of your spine. Practicing this one in front of a mirror is really helpful. If you stand sideways, You can really watch your spine position there to make sure you keep that flat back.